WandaVision is about to blow the collective minds of nerds all around the world. Let's talk about the hidden mystery of Wanda's dreamlike reality and a few central questions that fans have about the show. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Smash that like button. And I do want to let everybody know that a big part of what we are doing with the Den of Nerds in 2021 is happening over on our live streaming channel, the Den of Nerds Live. Go check it out. WandaVision is such an interesting thing because the word on the street is that it is an incredible show and there is an inordinate amount of buzz around this show. But I would argue that there is not exactly a large amount of hype around the show. And there's kind of a difference between buzz and hype. Sometimes buzz gets created from people that see a project behind the scenes, or they think a movie or a show or a coming thing is going to be so awesome. But hype is something different. Hype is when the internet or a bunch of people on social media, they think something is going to be awesome, or they get excited or hyped up about a thing. Now, I say that because hype and buzz are not the same thing, and the internet is yet to decide the fate of WandaVision. Will the show be hype or not? Now, at a baseline, what the show is going to be for you, so if you have like no concept, this should sort of frame it up for you. Essentially, the show will all be about the character of Wanda and kind of the character of Vision. That's why they call it WandaVision, but I do believe that the name WandaVision is also sort of a play on words for the vision that Wanda might be having or something to that effect. But before we get into the key things that people are thinking about with the show, including whether or not we'll dive into her mutant abilities from the comics, whether or not Vision will actually come back to life, and really whether or not Wanda is the victim or villain of the show, let's talk about WandaVision and the character of the Scarlet Witch in general. We know very little about WandaVision. Marvel has kept a lot of their stuff sort of close to the chest with regards to the show, but there's a lot of rumors, a lot of discussion by insiders and different things like that. The best summary that we have of the show is that it is taking place in some kind of alternate reality or changed reality or some kind of bubble thing that Wanda has created. And the character of Scarlet Witch is very powerful in Marvel Comics. We have seen a little bit of Wanda's power in the MCU, but the characters of the MCU actually tend to get powered down to make things just a little bit more balanced. In the comic books, characters like Thor and characters like Scarlet Witch are really in just total realms of other power compared to other more earthbound characters. And Wanda is so insanely powerful that, of course, in the House of M comic book series, she's going through trauma and tragedy, and she utters the words, "No more mutants," creating an alternate reality in which there are no mutants. Tons of mutants lose their powers. A whole bunch of stuff with reality gets changed around. It's really crazy. Now, we're not going to deeply dive into the House of M story because it's a great story, but there's plenty of YouTube videos out there and different places that you can go get that. But I think the real point here, for the sake of these ideas we're going to explore in this video, is to remind you that in the House of M, Wanda literally alters reality, and it's really, really crazy. And Doctor Strange in that story is one of the only people that actually can get to her and put things back to the way that they were. And we know that WandaVision is the beginning of a big multiverse arc, and that Wanda will also be in Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Strange is rumored to be in at least one episode of WandaVision, possibly more. Okay, so let's get into these crazy ideas that fans are discussing and talking about with regards to the show. The first one being the mutant powers of Wanda. This is such an interesting element because Wanda is a mutant in the comics, and her father's actually Magneto, okay? So she is the daughter of Magneto. She's very powerful, as of course Magneto is one of the most powerful mutants on the planet, right? But you see, mutants and X-Men and Magneto were off the table when Kevin Feige and company were creating the character of Wanda in the MCU. In the MCU, Wanda and Pietro are the victims of experimentation, and they are from Sokovia. They are experimented on by Hydra and Baron Strucker with Infinity Stone. But you see, now that Marvel has the X-Men back because of the Fox purchase of assets, they clearly are going to put X-Men and eventually Magneto into the MCU. And so a big question mark with Wanda, even just with this WandaVision show, which will specifically focus on this character, it does bring up interesting questions about mutants. Is Kevin Feige and company going to use WandaVision as a way to introduce some mutant elements? Now, I think it's fair to say that WandaVision was created and designed in a place where the mutants were off the table. Okay? But I think it's also very important to bring up the fact that even on Iron Man 1, Kevin Feige shot alternate scenes with Samuel L. Jackson for the post-credit scene where he brings up mutants and Spider-Man. And Feige shot that stuff knowing he didn't have the license to put it on the big screen, but I think he was trying to get it through. We also know he was constantly trying to work out deals with Sony to put the Oscorp Tower into the city's skyline of Avengers and different things like that. So the point is, he has the ability to do so. If we look at the past, it seems like he always tries to do this, but the thing that prevents him is the other studios. Now that's not in the way. I personally expect some mutant stuff to be established in the show. And interestingly enough, in a new canon book called the Shuri Files, where Shuri is sort of telling the audience things that she has in her files within Wakanda, and it's sort of just like a catalog of information for the MCU canon. Yeah, so here's what it says here. It says, while researching Hydra, Shuri discovered the real reason the nefarious organization worked in Sokovia. Apparently, Hydra found some genetic oddities among the inhabitants of the country, which made them ideal candidates for experiments with the Mind Stone. Now, to me, that sounds like Marvel is clearly going to establish that they are mutants, but that the stones and the proximity with the Mind Stone is going to change them, that it maybe accelerated their mutation. And some fans even believe that the snap and the blip itself may be the cause for a lot of X genes around the world in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to activate, and we will now be living through a bunch of mutants happening all at once around the planet, which would be really crazy. And that's sort of out there a little bit, but I just think, guys, there's no way Feige's going to leave that opportunity on the table. I think we are getting some clarification about mutants, about Wanda's powers, and about her being a mutant in WandaVision. Next up, I want to talk about love, and I want to talk about loss. Yeah, I know, simping hard. Now, check this out. Look, one of the things with this show that I'm interested in is whether or not Vision is actually alive. Okay, now if Wanda has the ability to bring Vision back to life literally, that is crazy and kind of awesome, but it's also kind of boring. And what I think might be more interesting is if the character brings Vision back, but it's not really Vision and he's not really alive. Now, what's ironic and interesting about that is you could make the argument that Vision was never real and that he was never really alive. He's technically completely synthetic. He's a robot, right? But the whole idea of Wanda and Vision's relationship is that despite him being a robot, he developed a personality and a consciousness and became an actual being. And that being happened to be somebody that Wanda fell in love with. To me, this is actually one of the most interesting aspects of Wanda and Vision's relationship from the comics. And so if you're not a comic book reader, you might not know this, but Wanda and Vision's relationship is so interesting throughout the comics. And it's way crazy and more nuanced with like this other dude, this Wonder Man dude, and all this other stuff. Look, it's very bizarre, but it's a cool part of the characters. And so I'm hoping we get to see that with Vision and Wanda and the show being WandaVision. I'm just really interested to see that love, that attachment, and whether or not she's going to be able to let it go ultimately, because I think that might be where we go, but there's like rumors that the kids are totally real, that Wiccan and Speed are totally going to be real, which we'll get into in a second, and that they will be in the MCU after this show. So what if Vision's all the way back? You know what I mean? That would be interesting as well, but there's consequences potentially for her bringing him back to life, right? So we'll just see, man. We'll see what they do with this, but it's a nuanced part of the story. I think it's a part of the story we want answers about as fans. And then we get to the big kahuna, the biggest thing, the craziest aspect of the show, the thing that fans want to know the most about, and this would be whether or not Wanda is victim or villain of this show. And even within the House of M story, she ultimately does realize that she's doing wrong. But I don't know that you could make the argument that she becomes a hero at the end of that story. If anything, the Marvel Universe sort of lives in the wake of Wanda's powers for a long time. And there were no mutants even born after House of M for a long time until Hope gets born, and then that's a whole nother thing, like with the mutants and everything like that, okay? So Wanda, forever after the House of M, has a weird place in Marvel, okay? So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with her in this show. Now, what a lot of people believe, and this has sort of been rumored and talked about for some time, is that Wanda will be manipulated and she will be sort of being used by some kind of nefarious force, whether this was Nightmare or whether this is Mephisto. Those are the two top choices right now. Nightmare, a very crazy, powerful, almost cosmic level entity within the MCU, but he's like Freddy Krueger. He can only affect you in the dreams, so it's possible that Wanda is just in a dream and Nightmare has infiltrated her and caused her to create all this chaos. However, the more likely choice is that Mephisto will be introduced in this show and will be the big bad of the series. Mephisto is something like the devil in Marvel Comics. He is a demon. He has incredible power. He can do deals for souls. He has beef with Doctor Doom. He has beef with Scarlet Witch. He has beef with Thanos. Mephisto is a very interesting character that has a deep history and spans a lot of the lore of Marvel Comics. And a lot of people believe that Evan Peters' character could be coming into this show and playing either Mephisto or Nightmare. And the inclusion of characters like Agatha Harkness, who is like a witch, like an actual witch from Marvel Comics, and then possible imagery from things like the Loki show that seem to show Mephisto in the TSA, and possible connections because of the Infinity Stones. And, you know, there's a lot of possibilities of how this is all fitting together, and Mephisto could be a big part of it. And a lot of the fans of Scarlet Witch are really hoping that Mephisto and or Nightmare or some other nefarious entity is behind this, because they want Wanda to remain heroic. They want her to conquer her internal problems, get out from under the fear of whatever this situation is, and then be a very powerful member of the Avengers moving forward. And I understand that. I don't actually want that, though. I want it to be more complex, and for her to be sort of to have this checkered past, but also be very powerful and helpful. I do believe she will help Doctor Strange, and she will do a lot of good and ultimately, you know, step in when it is needed. But I don't want her to just go and be heroic after this and everybody be like, oh yeah, no, that was totally just Mephisto. Because here's the thing, and I've talked about this with Marvel fans, this is what Civil War was about, okay? Tony believed, and the whole thing that set off Civil War was Wanda using her powers, and sure, you know, she made a mistake, but people died. You know what I mean? She's incredibly powerful. She used her powers, and people died. So what Tony was saying was that power needs to be put in check. Why she was so central to Civil War is because of the power that she has. Tony's just checking the power. So at the end of the day, what's about to happen in WandaVision is kind of like Cap vs. Tony all over again, with the lensing of Wanda. And I even expect we might get some of that trauma that Wanda has been through, like Vision being ripped, you know, the stone being ripped out in front of him, her killing Vision, you know what I mean? All kinds of crazy things will, I think, be covered in this show. So overall, it's a really exciting thing. You know, again, the last big point is all about her being villain or victim. Disney way. She'll probably be a victim. I wish she would be a little bit more of a villain, but I'm curious as to what you think about all of this. So let us know what you think about all this crap we talked about with WandaVision. What do you think about buzz versus hype? Are you excited for it? You think they're touching mutants? You think Vision's really back? You think it's Nightmare? You think it's Mephisto? What are you thinking? Let us know in the comment section below. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video. WandaVision is about to blow minds. Who wrote this?